ready to talk about some more slow changes? Are you ready? Well, let's see. We learned about weathering, erosion, and deposition. Weathering was when it completely breaks down and the sediment just falls apart. It just cries and it breaks down. It completely breaks down. Poor soil and rocks and pebbles. It just breaks down. It couldn't take it anymore. Well, and then, if that wasn't bad enough, erosion happens and carries it away. It just kidnaps it and takes it away. And then, if it wasn't bad enough, deposition happens and it gets dropped off. Just dropped off, like a bag of rocks. Like it was nothing. And all of those are caused by wind, water, ice. Some of them are caused by humans. Some of it's caused by temperature. Just all kinds of things. But today we're going to talk about deposition a little more. And we've got some pretty cool things to look at. One of the things I want to show you is how deposition happens. And we're going to look at that in a couple different ways. First of all, look up at the smartboard and it says, when deposition is occurring, earth materials that have been eroded are put in a new location. That's when the kidnapper, aka the erosion, drops it off. Just drops it off. Got sick of it, dropped it off. So like, for example, when the wind stops blowing, the sand and soil that was kidnapped or eroded might be dropped away and drop down in piles as big as sand dunes. Like sometimes it'll pile up so much in a river that it'll create like a little island. It's crazy. We're going to see some of that today. And water sometimes will get carried so far and then all of a sudden gravity will just pull all that soil out of it and drop it in a new location. So that could happen too. And when that happens and it forms a new, at the edge of the river, at the mouth of the river near the ocean, and it starts piling up, it creates a delta. I'm going to show you an example of that. See this right here? This is the delta. All this back here is a river. See all this river? This is an ocean. And all this land wasn't there millions of years ago. It took forever to create this land. And it all was created because of deposition. All because those crazy little kidnappers, weathering and erosion, dumped it off at the mouth of the river. Deposition. Yeah, that's right. Deposition. So, today we are going to look at deposition a little more in depth and see what happens. Well, the first thing I want to do is show you how it happens. See this pan right here? Well, we're going to see a little video that goes with this. I'm going to show you that in just a minute. Let's look at a timeline for deposition. Remember, it takes thousands of years for it to happen. So the weathering wears away the rocks, just wears it down and breaks it down into nothing over hundreds of years, and it causes a bunch of loose sediment. Then erosion kidnaps it and drags it down the river, or the wind erodes it and kidnaps it and drags it away. And it drags it down the river over years and years and years and years and years and years. And then eventually that erosion kidnapper, lousy kidnapper, drops it up at the mouth of a river, and it eventually forms a delta. And then as more and more sediment gets kidnapped and dropped off, it builds and builds and builds until it creates something crazy like you just saw in that. So we're going to see some more of that. Like, we're going to watch it. A lot of times the erosion will start way up here at a glacier, and it'll break down some sediment underneath the glacier into the river, and it'll just go down and down and down and down, and then it gets kidnapped and kidnapped and kidnapped and kidnapped and kidnapped and kidnapped with erosion, and then bam, drops it off right there at the mouth of the river in the ocean. How scary would you be if you were a rock and you just got dropped off? I bet you would try to find some more sediment to hang out with too, just like all these little pieces of sediment did. So they eventually built up and created their own little islands. Crazy. Let's see if we can see an example on YouTube. See, that's an example of delta. Look at all those rivers and all that extra land. Here it is. all the sediment is weathered down, and now it's being kidnapped by erosion, and it gets kidnapped and traveled away and traveled away and traveled away, and eventually it gets dropped off. And then as it builds up and it builds up and it builds up and it builds up and it builds up until eventually it comes all the way out of the water. All those sediments find each other and they hang out again. So, once again, just to reiterate what's going on here. The soil, it weathers away into little bitty pieces of loose sediment. It just falls apart. And then erosion comes along and kidnaps it, carries it down, just keeps carrying it, until it gets it to the mouth of the river and just drops it off like it was nothing. Like it didn't have anything to do with it to begin with. Yep, literally, that's what happens. Ridiculous, I know. Well, that is deposition for you. So thank you for watching, and I hope that you know how a delta is formed now at the mouth of a river with deposition. Okay, so the weathering, erosion, and deposition that we've been talking about. If you see all this right here, this has just been weathered away into nothing but loose sediment. Look at that. It just completely is weathered down. So the water that comes along is going to take it away, and it just drops it off in a new location when the water stops moving. Completely. Just drops it off like it was nothing. That is deposition. Look, we started out with this one little mound, and now we have all these other little mounds and rocks and pebbles. Crazy, I know.